大家早上好，欢迎来到我们今天的主日崇拜，让我们大家一起起立，让我们以我们敬虔的心来阅读我们今天的宣召经文《约书亚记》第24章14到第18节。现在你们要敬畏耶和华，诚心实意的侍奉他，将你们列祖在大河那边和在埃及所侍奉的神除掉，去侍奉耶和华。会众一起。百姓回答说：“我们断不敢离弃耶和华，去侍奉别神。”我们一起。耶和华又把住此地的亚摩利人都从我们面前赶出去，所以我们必侍奉耶和华，因为他是我们的神。让我们一起来做祷告。亲爱的巴巴父，在这个美好的主日，让我们来到你的殿堂，一起来敬拜你。主啊，你赐独生子于我们，使我们有永生的盼望。你也是那为我们永远信任、永不改变、永守承诺的主。愿主你使你的大能拯救在这个世界当中水深火热的人们。 主啊，愿你坚固我们的信心，让我们每日更加亲近你，让我们的内心充满从你而来的喜乐，让我们尽心尽意的爱你，并爱人如己。愿你的慈爱永远长存。奉我主耶稣基督的名，阿们。
然后你们，请我们依然站立，用我们千千万万个理由来颂赞我们的主，来让他圣灵充满我们。颂赞主我的灵，我的魂，遵从他的生命，尽全心和全力歌颂你，我遵从你的生命。太阳升起，新的一天来临，就是要再来歌颂我神。无论将要面对是顺境或是逆境，当夜晚来临，仍要歌颂你。Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship Your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. 颂赞主我的灵，我的魂，遵从他的生命，尽全心和全力歌颂你，我遵从你的生命。丰盛慈爱，且不轻易发怒，你名至高，你心宽容，因你的美善不住地歌颂你，千万个理由我要敬拜你。颂赞主我的灵，我的魂，遵从他的生命，尽全心和全力歌颂你，我遵从你的生命，尽全心和全力歌颂你，我遵从你的生命。 主用他无限的爱围绕在你我身旁，使我们枯干的心灵得满足。哦，让主鸽子般的生灵降临在你我身上，使我们一生得到带领服侍。齐声颂赞主的生命到永远。哦，让我们心中的忧虑完全交托出手里，使我们的一生与耶稣同行。Satisfy your soul. Oh, let him have the thing that holds you, and his spirit like a dove will descend upon your life and make you whole. heart。大家请坐，预备心奉献。将你最好的献给主，献你青春的力量，将你纯洁热情心灵，衷心为真理打仗。 你要忠心敬虔爱主，将最好奉献于他，将你最好的献给主，献你青春的力量。穿上救恩全副军装，忠心为真理打仗，将你最好的献给主，主在你心居首位，做主公尊主居首位，奉献一切最可贵，奉献你从主的赏赐，父神曾赐独生子，你要甘心乐意施主，将最好奉献于他，将最好的献给主，献你青春的力量，穿上救恩全副军装，忠心为真理打仗，将你最好的献给主，主爱伟大无可比，他将自己做你属家，天上荣耀赏赐你，他舍生命毫无怨言，救你脱罪把血洒，你要向他献上崇敬，将最好奉献于他，将你最好的献给主，献你青春的力量，穿上救恩全副军装，忠心为真理打仗。
God, we thank you that you give us so that we may return. We ask that you would bless this offering in the name of Jesus. Amen. This one's a little better. Okay. How's that sound? Good?
Yeah.
Does it sound like me? All right, then it's working.
今天我们很荣幸有Mr. Ken Schafer 要来这里跟我们讲，今天的正道题目是决定性时刻 （Defining Moment）。
Defining moments.
Yeah.
Good morning.
大家早安。
There are specific moments in our lives that change us.
我们生命中有许多时刻会改变我们一生。
Moments where before the moment we were one way, and then it happens, and then the trajectory of our life changes.
在那个时刻前，我们是一个状态，可是当那件事情发生以后，我们生命的整个轨迹都改变了。
You have had this happen to you.
你可能有这样像这类事情发生在你身上。
And I'm going to give you a few examples from my life.
我会跟你分享一些我自己生命中的例子。
We're going to talk about your life.
我们也会跟你讲，今天跟大家讲自己的生命。
And it's my hope this morning to help create a defining moment for you. This
我
is what I
希
mean.
望今天在你生命中也是一个决定性的时刻。
In 1989, I was working at a summer job.
1989的时候，我暑期工作的时候，
I had just completed my first year of university.
我大学1年级刚结束，
I went into work in the morning expecting to leave work in the evening.
我早上去上班，期待今天上完1天班以后晚上离开。
But I was fired.
可是那天我被开除了。
Maybe that's happened to you.
说不定这样类似的事情发生在你身上过。
I had a plan for my day and for my life,
我对我的那一天，对我生命有一定的期待，
and it was interrupted.
可是被打断了。
23 years later,
23年后，
in 2012,
2012的时候，
I went to work in the morning,
我早上去上班，
expecting to work for the whole day,
期待整天在那里工作。
and by 10 o'clock in the morning,
10点的时候，
I was fired again.
我又被开除了。
Now, I don't want you to think that I'm fired a lot.
我不希望你认为我是常被开除的人。
That was 23 years apart.
23年，中间23年间
It
隔
was，only 2 times that it's happened to me.
这是我一辈子中只有这2次，
But both times were defining, and here's why.
可是2次都改变了我生命。
The first time I was fired, I was led into a career that I was not pursuing.
我第一次被开除后，就帮我进入一个我以前没有期待的事业。
The second time I was fired, I had to leave that same career because of a non-compete.
第2次被开除，我就得离开那个事业，因为我签的合约。
So one moment led me into something God had for me,
第一个时刻带我进入神对我的计划中，
and one moment led me out of that and into something else.
第2个时刻带我离开那个，进入神的下一个阶段。
If I'm going to tell the story of my life, I can divide it based on those moments.
我如果要跟你讲我一生的话，可以用那几个时刻来分割。
Now, we're in church, so I know this has happened to you,
我们在教会中，我也知道这在你生命中发生过，
or at least I hope this has happened to you.
最少我希望在你生命中发生过。
Because as Christians, we can also divide our lives into 2 time periods.
因为身为一个基督徒，我们生命也可以分割成不同的时期。
There was our life before our encounter with God,
我们经历神之前，
the time we met Jesus,
我们认识耶稣，
and our life now.
然后我们现在的新生命，
And it's not just conversion that we can count as a defining moment.
不只是这些。
I'm guessing there's all kinds of defining moments in your lives.
我也猜你生命中还有很多其他决定性的时刻。
What about the time that you met your spouse?
你认识你配偶的时候呢？
What about the time you got married?
你结婚那一刻呢？
For some of us, maybe it's a time when we got divorced. That was a defining moment in
然
our
后对
lives.
中间有些人说，是不是离婚那时刻？
What about the birth of our first child
那你的大孩子出生的时候呢？
or our second child
或第2个孩子，
or the child that's a problem?
或者是问题儿童出生的时候，
We can divide our lives into these specific moments and these time periods.
我们生命中有这许多决定性时刻分割开来。
Sometimes it's a relationship,
有时候是一关系，
sometimes it's a book,
有时候是一本书，
sometimes it's a sermon.
有时候是一篇讲道。
When I met your pastor Matthew, he told me his story.
我认识王牧师的时候，他跟我讲了他自己的经历。
Pastor Matthew divides his life into 2 sections.
王牧师也把他的生命分割2个时刻、2个时段。
There was the time he was in China and he was an atheist and went to college.
他以前在国内是个无神论者的时候去上大学，
He met a missionary,
他碰见一宣教师，
and God had a plan for Matthew's life that was revealed by that missionary.
那透过那传道士就改变了王牧师神在王牧师身上的计划。
If you had told Pastor Matthew when he was 17 years old that he would be the pastor of a Chinese congregation in Brentwood, Tennessee, he would have laughed at you.
如果你在王牧师17岁的时候跟他讲说，他有一天会是在 Brentwood 这里一个中国教会的牧师，他会笑坏了。
And we've all had moments like this.
我们生命中有许多类似的时刻。
What's most interesting is that many times in the moment, you don't know that it's happening.
最有趣的一点是，当时发生的时候，我们常常不知道那是对我们生命有多大的影响。
When I went to work those 2 days in 1989 and 2012, I had no idea that God was about to move my life in a new direction.
1989、2012那2天我去上班的时候，我一点都没有想象到神会那样子极大的改变我的生命。
But he did.
可是他确实改变了我生命。
And you have had the same experience.
你也有同样的经历。
I want to tell you the story of a conversation in my life that helped define me.
我今天要跟大家分享我生命中一次谈话彻底的改变我的生命。
My hope is that in telling you this story, I can create a defining moment for you.
我期待今天跟你分享这个故事的时候，让今天也变成你生命中决定性的时刻。
You didn't come here this morning expecting a defining moment.
你今天早上来的时候，大概不期待今天是你生命中一个决定性的时刻。
If we're honest, you came this morning and are thinking, why didn't I go on vacation this weekend?
你今天早上说不定来的时候还在犹豫说，我今天是不是应该放假出去玩呢？
Tell me that I'm wrong.
你敢说你不是这样想吗？
I'm not wrong, but you're here and God has a plan for you.
我没有说错，可是你今天来这里是因为神在你身上有极好的计划。
And I hope that I can help you hear what he has to say.
那我希望我能帮助你听到神要对你说的话。
Because if you can understand this moment, it's not an exaggeration to say you may answer many unanswered questions.
因为你如果能理解这关键性的一时刻，你生命中许多疑问可能就能够得到解答了。
Maybe you're here and you're saying, I feel stuck spiritually.
说不定你今天觉得你的灵命卡住了，
I can't be holy like Pastor Matthew.
我不能像王牧师那样圣洁，
I feel that I'm in the same place and my friends are in a better place than me.
或者我觉得我一直卡住，可是我朋友很明显比我更好。
Or maybe you're here and you're thinking, out of all the billions of people in the world, God has chosen to bless me.
或者是你觉得说，在这世上千千万万人中，神竟然选择要祝福我，
Why has he done that?
他为什么祝福我呢？
What is God's purpose for me?
神祝福我这样的目标或期待是什么呢？
Or maybe you're saying to yourself, my friends seem to be blessed, but I don't.
说不定你是觉得说，诶，我觉得我有些朋友认识神，受到很多祝福，我却没有。
What is it that I need to do to be blessed?
我该做什么才能得到神的祝福呢？
If you feel stuck spiritually,
如果你觉得你的灵命卡住了，
if you want to know what it is God wants for you, how to do his will,
如果你想要知道神对你有什么期待，神在你身上有什么旨意，
I'm going to tell you about a conversation where I learned what God wanted for me.
我要跟你分享一段很关键的对话，让我知道神对我的期待。
We're going to look at the biblical passage on which that conversation is
我
based.
们也看到今天要跟大家分享那一段的经文，
And I'm going to challenge you to take a step.
我也要挑战你，跟我一起学习这一点。
This is not the day where you come and just get to sit.
你今天不是就来这里就听一听就好了，
So you should have gone on vacation.
所以其实你可能现在后悔，觉得你今天应该去度假的。
30 years ago, I was graduating from college.
30年前我刚从大学毕业，
Actually, like this week, I think I was graduating from college 30 years ago.
我觉得好像这个礼拜刚好30周年。
And I think I told you the last time I shared with you, I grew up in a household where we didn't have very much money.
我记得上次好像跟大家分享过，我们家并不有钱，
By American standards, we grew up poor.
按照美国标准，我们算是贫穷的家庭。
That is no longer the financial condition of my parents.
我父母现在不是这样子了，
But the way that we grew up and what we didn't have influenced me greatly.
可是我们当初生长的环境中，因为我们贫穷，真的对我有很大的影响。
In fact, it influenced me so much, I kind of had two main desires. I wanted to be rich and I wanted to be generous.
那这整个环境对我最大的影响，就是让我想要以后要富有，而且要慷慨。
In fact, if you had asked me when I was in high school, what do you want to be when you grow up? I answered, I want to be rich.
如果你问我说你长大期待你长大要怎么样，我说我想要做一个有钱人。
I was a lot of fun as a kid.
我小时候真的很好玩。
So I grew up a Christian in a very functional Christian home, but I went off to college.
我长大的时候是在一个基督教家庭，是完整家庭长大，然后我去大学，
I studied business. I'm the oldest of 3 children and the first to graduate from college.
我专攻商业，然后我是我们家3个孩子里面老大，第一个毕业的。
And this was a big deal. So my family came into town. We were celebrating my graduation.
那是我在我家里是很大的一件事情，是我们全家都来跟我一起庆祝我毕业典礼。
And my father did something that was unusual for him.
然后我爸爸那天做一件很特别的事，
He actually gave me advice that I didn't ask for. He rarely does that.
他很少我没有问他的时候自己给我一些建议，可能那一天他特殊不请自来的给我一个建议。
Now, some of you are laughing. I'm being serious. He gave me unsolicited advice, and that was uncommon.
我们大家有些人都在笑，可是我讲这句是真的。我爸爸从来没有，我没有问他说，他不会给我任何建议，不会跟我任何要求。
This is what my father told me. He said, "You know that things haven't always been easy for us financially."
我爸那天就跟我说，你知道我们家经济上并不方便。
In the last few years, that's turned around, and it had.
过去几年有比较好了，事实也是如此。
He said, "You know, your mother and I have not always given to the church."
他说，你知道你妈妈跟我并没有好好的奉献。
But in the last few years, we've changed that, and God has blessed us because of it.
可是过去年我们改变了，那神就大大的祝福了我们。
And then he said,
然后他跟我说，
I want to challenge you to start tithing to your church.
我挑战你开始11奉献。
Well, I told you that I had desire to be rich and to be generous,
我跟你讲过，我想做个有钱人，做一个慷慨的有钱人。
but I only had a plan to be one of those things,
可是我计划中主要是针对有钱
and
人
it，was not a plan to be generous.
慷慨是一个以后再想的事情。
What I was pursuing was wealth,
我专注于在追求财富，
but my father commands tremendous respect in my life.
可是我爸爸跟我要求的不同的方向，
And I knew that I should give,
我知道我应该给，
and so I decided to give.
所以我就决定开始给出去。
And my father said, You know, you're 21 years old, you're on your own, you're starting your own life. Why not do this?
我爸爸就说：“你21岁，你已经独立了，你开始一个新生，你为什么不这样做呢
And I said, Yes.？”
我说：“好。”
I was part of a church about this size. It was a church plant.
我当初的教会也跟现在我们中文堂差不多一样，也是一个心中在种的教会。
And when you make good money and tithe to a church plant, they notice.
那你开始有赚钱，而且11奉献的时候，教会是很快发觉的。
And one of the founders of that church who's spoken here, Pastor Steve,
那Steve 牧师就是当初也是建立教会一员，
I ended up marrying his daughter.
我就娶了他的女儿。
We weren't married yet. He pulled me aside. He said, What did you do?
他就私底下把我拉开，问我说：“你做了什么呢
I said, My father challenged me to tithe. ？”
他说，我就跟他回答说：“我爸爸挑战我要11奉献。”
And I did.
那我就乖乖这样做了。
Now, what was interesting was I didn't know that single conversation was going to lead me onto a path of generosity.
我当初完全没有体会说，那一段对话就会带我走向一个慷慨的道路。
But it did.
可是真的带了我走这条路。
Now, by no means am I all the way down this road,
我不是说这条路我已经走完了，走成功了。
but tithing consistently to my church has been the single most consistent financial habit in my life.
可是11奉献，持续的对我教会11奉献，是我这一生持续的一个好习惯。
Now, right now, you're worried
那你现在可能听了这句话，大家都担心了。
because you think this is a sermon about tithing.
你觉得原来今天的讲道就是主要要你11奉献，
We already took the offering,
其实我们已经收奉献了。
and I told you I was going to ask you to do something.
那我跟你讲说，我要邀请你做些事，
So you're thinking we're going to take the offering again.
你说明担心说我们待会儿要再收一次奉献，
Relax.
放松吧，
We are not going to do that.
我们不会这样做的。
But what I do want to do
可是我想做的是，
is teach you one scriptural principle.
我想教你圣经里面一个真理。
And this is, without knowing it, my father was challenging me to this principle.
当初我爸爸可能不知道，可是他挑战我的就是遵守这圣经的真理。
I'm going to read you 3 verses.
我今天跟大家分享3节经文，
We're going to talk about what it means.
我跟大家讨论这3节经有意义。
You don't even need to take notes
你不需要做笔记，
because I took them for you.
我已经做了。
I'm going to give them to you on the way out.
待会儿离开的时候，我会发这笔记给你们。
Are you ready?
准备好了吗？
1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17.
提摩太前书第6章17节，
This is Paul writing to Timothy, his protege,
这保罗对提摩太他的继承人讲，
and he is telling Timothy how to pastor the church that Timothy leads.
他在教导提摩太怎么样去牧会，
Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant,
嘱咐那些今世富足的人不要自高，
nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God.
不要依靠无定的钱财，只要依靠那厚赐百物给我们享受的神。
Command them to do good,
要嘱咐他们行善，
to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share.
在好事上富足，甘心施舍，乐意供给人。
In this way, they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age,
为自己积成美好的根基，预备将来，
so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life.
将他们持定那真正的生命。
Now I know what you're thinking.
你可能在想，
You're thinking, I'm glad that we read this passage
我很高兴我们一起读这段经节，
because it's for rich people and I'm not rich.
这是给有钱人，然后我不是有钱人，所以跟我没关系。
I have good news and bad news.
我好消息跟坏消息跟你讲，
The good news is you're rich.
好消息是你是有钱人，
The bad news is this passage is for you.
坏消息这一段经文对你有关。
All of us have been different places in the world,
我们大家都经历过这世界上很多地方，
and we have seen what poverty looks like,
我们也看过贫穷的地方，
and we've seen what wealth looks like.
我们也看过富足的地方。
And if you live in the United States,
如果你现在住在美国的话，
and if you live in Williamson County,
你住在 Williamson，
and if you live in Brentwood,
住在 Brentwood 这里，
you cannot make a case to me that you are not rich.
你不可能说你不是有钱人。
If you own a house within driving distance of this church,
如果你的屋子是开车可以到达教会的，
if you have a car that you drove here in,
如果你有一台车能够开来教会，
if your family has 2 cars or 3 cars,
如果你家有2台车甚至3台车，
if there's enough food in your pantry that you don't need to go shopping for a month,
如果你家里厨师有足够吃你1个月的食物，
you're rich.
你是有钱人。
Paul is instructing Timothy, and Timothy is to command rich people to a certain set of behavior.
那保罗在嘱咐提摩太，提摩太要命令这些富足的人。
And I love the word command.
这是一个命令，我很喜欢这个字眼。
Sometimes when you have a sermon, there's multiple points.
有时候你讲到的时候有很多重点，
There's not multiple points today, there's just one.
我今天没有很多个重点，只有一个重点。
I can't say it in Chinese, but in English, generosity is not optional.
慷慨不是可有可无的，
Generosity is not optional.
慷慨不是可有可无的。
Paul tells Timothy to command rich people to be generous.
保罗在这嘱咐提摩太要命令这些富足的人必须要慷慨。
Great news, this is not a passage about tithing.
好，现在这不是在讲11奉献，
He's talking about generosity as a lifestyle.
他只讲生活上一个慷慨的形态模式。
Does that mean, Ken, as the stewardship minister, you don't want us to tithe?
这我代表 BBC 管理这奉献部分，我今天是在跟你讲说你不需要11奉献吗？
No, I think Paul is assuming that the people in the church are tithing.
我觉得保罗是假设教会的会友们都已经有在11奉献了。
Paul is calling us to a different kind of generosity.
保罗在这吩咐我们要做的是不同样的慷慨。
He means to live with an open hand.
他的意思是我们手要张开，生活上心态要张开。
When
慷慨
he commands us to be generous, to be rich in good deeds, he is commanding us in this way.
他命令我们要慷慨，在好事上富足。他的意义是，
Will other people think that you're generous?
我们有慷慨的名声吗？别人认为我们是慷慨的人吗？
When people look at you, will they describe you as generous?
别人看你的时候，他们会形容你，用慷慨这个字眼来形容你吗？
That is the test.
这就是真正的考验，
That is the standard to which we are being called.
这就是他呼召我们要遵守的生命的一个标准。
For the mature believer, generosity is not optional.
对一个成熟的信徒来说，慷慨不是可有可无的一部分。
And understanding this truth can be defining.
那了解这一点，会是你生命中决定性的一个时刻。
You can divide your life between a time where you did not understand generosity and a time where you practiced it.
你可以把你生命分割成你不了解慷慨意义的时刻，跟你了解了慷慨意义之后的生命。
There's a few other things I want to notice from this passage.
那这一段经文还有其他一些我想分享的部分。
There are 2 sets of brothers in the text.
在经文里面讲到群弟兄们，
Wealth and arrogance are brothers.
这里一点让大家知道是富足富有跟骄傲是兄弟。
Command those who are rich not to be arrogant or to put their hope in wealth.
在保罗讲说，在警告富足的人不要骄傲，也不要再把他们期待期望放在他们钱财上。
Earlier in this same chapter in 1 Timothy 6,
在前面提摩太前书前面一段有讲到，
we read that those who want to be rich fall into temptation and a trap.
在前面的经节有讲到，那些想要发财的人将会落在网罗之中，
They become spiritually ruined.
他们的属灵会灵命上会遭到遭害。
The unbridled pursuit of wealth will destroy us.
如果我们只是拼命追求富足，会毁灭我们。
Our money is the number one competitor for our attention that should be given to God.
钱财是我们对神注意力竞争上最大、偷走我们对神注意力的事情。
Generosity is one of the means God gives us to break the hold of wealth on us.
慷慨就是神给我们打破这个追求富有这个枷锁的工具。
Isn't it true that we've known rich people that are arrogant?
难道我们中间不认识有许多富有的人其实是蛮骄傲的吗？
The path that I was on as a young man to pursue riches and generosity could have led me one of two places.
我年轻的时候追求要富有，而且慷慨，可能带我走向两个不同的道路。
The pursuit of riches without generosity would have led to arrogance.
我只要只是盲目的追求富有，而不追求慷慨，会让我变成一个骄傲的人。
But there is a second set of brothers in the passage.
可是这段经文中讲到另外一对兄弟，
Generosity and blessing are brothers.
慷慨跟神祝福也是兄弟。
When we give, when we live generously, the passage says that God blesses us.
我们给出去，我们生活是一个慷慨的模式后，神会不断的祝福我们。
We lay up treasures for ourselves, not just in this life,
我们会累积财宝，不只是在这世上，
but in the life to come.
在永生中也是。
And understanding this,
那理解这一点，
understanding this can be defining.
了解这件事情会改变我们的生命。
My father's conversation for me was defining.
我父亲跟我那一段谈话改变了我，决定了我一生。
God calls us to a lifestyle of generosity.
神呼召我们活得慷慨，
And so those questions I asked at the beginning,
所以我起先问的那些问题，
how can I grow spiritually?
我灵命如何成长呢？
I would ask you,
我会问你说，
are you generous?
你慷慨吗？
Because if we're not generous,
如果你不慷慨的话，
and God commands us to be
可
generous,
神命令我们要慷慨，
not only are we not generous, we're actually disobedient.
那我们不只是不慷慨，我们其实是违背了神的使命。
God usually does not choose to bless disobedience.
神通常是不会祝福那些违背他使命的人。
In this particular area of Christian life, it is especially important that we are obedient.
这对基督徒的生命是非常重要的一部分。
If we're not obedient here, we won't grow.
如果我们在这一点不能顺服的话，那在其他部分也很难。
You do not know any mature Christians who are not generous.
你不会认识任何成熟的基督徒，不慷慨的成熟基督徒。
And maybe the question you're asking is, God has given me so much.
那说明你问的是神给我那么多，
Why has he chosen to bless me?
他为什么选择祝福我那么多呢？
I don't know about you. Every day I wake up in this place where we live, I feel extraordinarily blessed.
我不知道你感觉怎么样。我每天醒来看到我们住的这地方，我觉得非常受到祝福。
This passage tells us God gives us things for our enjoyment. It is okay to enjoy things.
神给我们这段经文讲，神给我们这些祝福是让我们能享受这些神祝是好的。
But we are commanded to use what we have to bless others.
可是神也命令我们使用我们手中拥有去祝福他人。
In the same way, if you're wondering how to be blessed,
那同样的，如果你在想说怎么样让得到神更多的祝福呢？
how much of a blessing are you?
那你对别人来说是什么样子的祝福呢？
Are you generous?
你慷慨吗？
Because generosity is not optional.
因为慷慨不是可有可无的。
Whenever I speak to people about generosity,
通常我假如是跟人家讲到慷慨这一点的时候，
I can almost always watch body language change in the room.
我看看人们的身体语言，在这是房间里面每个人的身体语言都改变了。
Because you're worried about what I'm going to ask you to do.
你会开始担心说我会要求你做什么，
And you're worried that I'm going to send you an invoice.
你会担心说我会送你一个账单跟你讨钱，
I'm not going to do that.
我不会这样做。
I'm going to tell you another story.
我跟你讲另外一个故事。
Some years ago,
几年前
I was no longer able to buy pants.
我没有钱能够买裤子，
Now, that may not seem related, but hang with me.
说明这听起来不相关，可是请你耐心听下去。
The problem was that I was fat.
问题是那时候我太胖了，
The problem is that I was fat. There were I could no longer buy jeans that fit me.
我买不到够大的裤子，
Now, this made me mad
让我很生气，很生气。
for many reasons.
当然很多理由，
And so I decided that I was going to lose weight. Now, maybe you've done this.
我决定我要减肥，说不定你也有同样的经历。
So what's the first thing you do when you want to lose weight?
那你减肥通常会想到第一个做法是什么呢？
You weigh yourself, right?
你开始称你自己，
Because you need to know how much you weigh so you can know how much you need to lose.
你需要知道你现在体重多少，你才知道你需要减到多少。
So I pulled out the bathroom scale, and it was this old scale. It had like a needle. It was analog scale.
那我拉出我们的旧的磅秤，那这种旧式磅秤是用指针型的，
And the little glassware was kind of cloudy, so I couldn't really see it very well.
然后那个旧到那个玻璃都开始模糊了，所以你看不太清楚数字是多少。
But to make it even better, if I shifted my weight on the scale, I can make it tell me a 5 or 10 pound difference.
那我只要稍微站姿势不一样的话呢，就可以差个5磅10磅的。
My scale was lying to me.
我那个磅秤会骗我，
So
所以
I got a digital scale.
我拿一个数字性的磅秤。
Now, I'm not going to step on this now,
我现在不会称给你们看啊，
but every morning I step on this scale,
可是每天我们都站
and
上
it
去，
gives me an accurate weight to within 1/10 of a pound.
每天我站上去，它会确实准时的跟我讲我现在体重多少，
It's really easy to know what my true weight is.
很容易知道我现在到底体重多少。
And it's pretty easy to know where we are in generosity.
那要看我们现在多慷慨，其实也蛮简单的。
Now, we need to be careful
那你要小心。
with what I'm about to tell you because we know that the Pharisees were great at tithing.
那我们要小心，因为要注意听我现在要讲，因为我们知道法利赛人也很会十一奉献。
And Jesus condemned the condition of their heart.
那可是耶稣责备他们的心态。
But today, I'm going to give you a piece of paper.
那今天我要发
And if, like me,
功课出
we'll give it on the way.
OK，
Yeah. If, like me, you had an intention to be generous but no plan,
如果像我一样，你梦想要做一个慷慨人，可是没有一计划的话，
this paper is going to help you.
今天要发的这些纸会帮助你，
It's going to tell you how much you weigh.
会跟你讲说你体重多少。
Now, many of you are not going to want to do this
你们中间很多人会不想做这件事，
because this happens in church. You're the pastor and you preach and people look at you and they nod.
教会中这并蛮常见的。
And then
很多
they,
人听牧师讲到一直点头，
and then they say, I don't need to do that, or I know the answer, or that doesn't apply to me.
可是他们心里会讲说啊，我不需要那样做，可是这跟我无关，
I'm not offended.
没关系，
I also have done this.
我也这样做过。
I'm going to tell you, if you'll go through this exercise, it has the potential to change your life.
可是我会跟你讲说，如果你好好这样做哈，这有可能会改变你的生命。
So I took all the notes in the sermon for you. When you leave, you're going to get this paper.
所以今天要走的时候，我们会发这张纸，已经把今天的笔记都做好了。
At the top, it says defining moments. That is the title of the sermon.
在上面讲决定性的时刻，就是今天讲到的题目。
Underneath, it says generosity is not optional because that's the point of the sermon.
然后下面会讲，还会讲我讲的重点，慷慨不是可有可无的。
And then it says wealth and arrogance are brothers, and so are generosity and blessing.
然后再来讲富贵与傲慢是兄弟，慷慨与祝福隐隐相随。
Then there's 3 questions.
然后有3个问题要问大家，
Now, I want to let you know this is an exercise just for you.
然后要跟大家强调这点，这只是给你个人使用，
This is not a paper you're going to turn back in.
这个不是要你交回来的功课。
Pastor Matthew is not going to ask you for this paper next
王
week.
牧师也不会跟你讨这个资料。
If you want, you can write down the answers and crumple the paper up and throw it away.
你要的话，你可以回答这个，然后就把这张纸丢掉。
But here are the 3 questions. The
可是
first one,
这3个问题是，
the first 2 are just numbers.
头2个问题只是一个数目字而已。
The first one is, how much money did I make last year?
第一个问题是你去年赚了多少钱？
And I want you to write it down.
我想你写下来。
Now, if you don't know the answer to this, your accountant does.
如果你不知道的话，请问你的会计师，
It's on your 1040. You just filed it last month.
在你税务单上写得很清楚。
Any accountants in the house? Okay,
这里
so
有
so you write the number down. Whatever you made in your household, just write down that number.
不管你赚多少钱，就是把它写在第一题的答案。
But the second question,
第2题，
you might have to think about.
你顺便想一想，
How much money did I give away last year?
那你去年给出去多少钱？
Now, this could be money that is that you gave to the church as a tithe.
有可能是你11奉献，你其他的奉献。
Separately, if it's a tithe, it should be 10% of the first number.
当然，11奉献应该是第一个数目的1/10，
But because that's what a tithe is.
11奉献就是1/10。
But whatever the number is, write it down. So it should be money you gave to the church.
所以不管是什么，请写下，应该是包括你给教会的钱，
Maybe it's money you use to support family member in China or somewhere else.
说不定是你帮助你家人的送回家的钱。
Maybe you gave money away to another organization. You support children with compassion or something like that.
说不定你资助其他的慈善机构。
Whatever would count is giving money away. I want you to put that number down.
不管是什么，你给出去的，我希望你把它加起来写在第2题那里。
Okay, now it can be an analog scale or a digital one. That's up to you.
这可以是像刚才描过，是模糊的数字呢，还是准确的数字？这是你自己对自己一个交代。
So now what you have is a complete picture of 2 really important areas of your finance, how much I made and how much I gave away.
可是现在你就有你经济上很重要的2个指标：你赚了多少钱，你给出去多少。
The third question is not a number.
第3个问题就不是一个数字了。
If someone else knew these numbers, would they think I was generous?
第3个问题问你自己：如果有别人看到了这2个数字，他会觉得你是一个慷慨的人吗？
It's a yes or no question.
这只是是或者否。
And how you answer that question and what you do is defining.
你怎么回答那个问题，就是你生命中这个决定的时刻。
I'm not going to tell you what your next step is after that.
我不会跟你讲你下一步该怎么做，
I'm going to make some suggestions.
我给你一些建议。
Maybe you need to start tithing to your church.
说不定你该开始11奉献。
Maybe if you're actually really generous, you need to find ways to bring your children into the conversation.
说不定你已经非常慷慨，那你必须要跟你的家人、跟你孩子分享这一点。
Maybe you need to find absolutely stupid ways to bless other people with money.
说不定你应该寻求很奇特的方法来帮助、来祝福他人。
My family and I one time were in a small restaurant east of here,
有一次，我跟我家人在一个很小的餐厅，在东边一个小餐厅吃饭，
a family-owned restaurant. I think it was on a Memorial Day weekend.
好像也是这样子。Memorial Day weekend 在那边吃饭，
And the waitress was in there. She'd had a hard day, but she was working hard.
那我们试着那一天他已经有非常辛苦的一天，
She paid special attention to my son, who was being 6 years old.
那他特别照顾我6岁的孩子，
So we left her a tip of $100.
所以我们给他100块钱的小费。
I think we can all agree that $100 is not a lot of money.
那我们当然100块钱并不算非常多，
And yet that waitress followed us to the car,
可是他就跟我们出到外面来，
asked us if we made a mistake.
问我们说我们有写错了啊。
And when we said no,
那我们说没有的时候，
she cried
他开始哭起来，
for $100.
只为了100块。
Command those who are rich in this present age to be generous.
所以命令富足人要慷慨。
Maybe generosity looks for you like giving lavish presents to somebody.
说不定慷慨对你来说是给一些很富足、很特别的礼物。
Maybe there's somebody near you that needs a car and you wanted a new one anyway. Give them your old one and you get a new one.
说不定你周遭有人需要车，那你本来就打算买新车，那你就把旧车给他，你可以去买一台新车，
Or maybe get them the new one and you keep yours,
甚至给他们新车，你继续开你的旧车，
because that would be generous.
那才是真正的慷慨啊！
Generosity is not optional.
慷慨不是可有可无的，
We are to live with an open hand.
我们必须把我们手张开。
Maybe there's missionaries you want to support.
说明有你想支持的传教士，
Maybe there's other ways to be generous with your family.
说不定有许多你可以对你的家人更慷慨的地方。
Do you know what's interesting to me as a stewardship minister? I talk to people of almost every economic level.
在身为教会对钱财方面的事工，我跟社会许多阶层人讲话，
And everybody thinks the next guy up is the one that's rich.
每个人都觉得是比他们更多钱人才是有钱人。
People whose net worth is in the millions think that they're not rich.
有人财富已经超过100万的，也觉得他们自己没有多少钱。
And if that's you,
如果你是这样的话，
you're wrong.
你错了。
But even if you have less, you're wrong.
就算你没有那么多，你还是错了。
God has called us to a lifestyle of generosity. It's contagious and it's irresistible.
神是呼召我们活出一个慷慨的生命，这是有传染力的，会影响周遭的人。
Pastor Matthew invites me to spend time with you, and I am so grateful.
王牧师邀请我来跟你们大家一起，我真的很感谢这一点。
I love being in this congregation. You guys are fun.
我喜欢在中文堂，你们是很有趣的一群人。
And there's a sense in which this congregation is very much like the one that Timothy pastored.
我觉得其实我们这个会堂其实很像提摩太在牧的那个教会。
In this way, in Nashville,
就像这样，因为在 Nashville 这里，
there are more Baptists than there are people.
其实可能我们浸信会的人比其实人数还多。
I don't know. Does that translate?
I hope so.
Okay. Okay. And so Baptists have something that they're known for.
所以其实浸信会有一个有名声，
But there aren't that many Chinese Baptist churches.
可其实没有那么多中国的浸信会在这里。
Timothy pastored a church that was a minority in a much bigger community.
提摩太当初牧的教会也是在他们那个区域是少数的。
That church had a witness, and so do you.
那个教会在那里做见证，同样中文堂在这里可以做一个见证。
What would you like to be known for in our community?
那大家希望我们中文堂在这个社区有什么样子的名声呢？
You know, Pastor Matthew spends hours each week preparing doctrinally sound sermons.
那王牧师每个礼拜花许多个钟头准备正确好的讲道，有正确神学的讲道。
His office is right next to mine. I'm so glad he does that.
我知道这一点，因为他办公室就在我旁边，我很高兴看到他花许多精神在准备神学，
It's important.
这是非常重要的。
Do you want to be known for the quality of your doctrine?
那你希望中文堂名声是我们有正确的神学吗？
What about being friendly? What about fellowship? Is that what you'd like to be known for?
那或是团契呢？你希望我们知道是我们的名声是我们非常友善、有很好的团契吗？
How about the quality of your food?
或者是我们的食物？
That's good. You should be known for that. You should invite me.
我们名声应该有包括好吃的食物。
You're going to be known for something.
你绝对是有一群人，绝对是有一个名声的。
What if all the people around you over whom you had influence said that church is filled with generous people?
那如果周遭的认识中文堂人都说那个教会是一群慷慨的人呢？
How defining would that be for you?
这对你来说有多决定性呢？
How about your congregation
对我们整个会堂呢？
and your community?
对整个社区呢？
No one can resist open-handed generosity.
没有人可以推脱这种慷慨的性格、慷慨的人。
And for every Christian, generosity is not optional.
那对每个基督徒来说，慷慨不是一个可有可无的事。
So as your benediction, I'm going to read you this passage again.
那最后祝祷，我来再读一次这段经文。
Paul tells Timothy,
保罗跟提摩太说
command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant or to put their hope in wealth.：“
你要嘱咐那些今世富足人，不要自高。
Wealth is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment.
钱财是不定的，可是我们依靠在那赏赐给我们、后赐给我们这些的神。
Command them to do good,
嘱咐他们行善，
to be rich in good deeds,
在好事上富足，
to be generous and willing to share.
甘心施舍，乐意供给人。
In this way, they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age,
为自己积成美好的根基，预备将来，
so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life.
叫他们持定那真正的生命。
God, I pray for these people.
神，我祝福这群人，
You have brought them here from many places.
你从许多地方呼召他们前来这里，
They have many different stories.
他们有许多不同的故事，
Some of our moments are defining. They've changed us.
有些时刻改变了我们生命。
I pray that as we all journey towards being as generous as you would have us to be,
我祈求你带领我们走向这慷慨的道路。
that this moment today would be defining
今天这一刻变成我们生命中决定性的一刻，
for these people who love you.
让这群爱你的人
In Jesus' name.
奉主
Amen.
耶稣的名，阿们。
Thanks for Mr. King and Mr. King and to give us the wonderful message. And generosity is not optional, okay? And I know there's some of our members, our coworkers, and our congregation are actually supporting church, our families that we know, and also the ministries that we know. So we encourage everybody doing the same thing and to be generous. 下面是我们的报告时间。我们的6月3日之后呢，就是我们的下一个周五，我们的周五团契呢就改在2100到2108房间。如果你们就是在我们测试时间足够久的话，就是我们之前还没有到 Children's Ministry 之前的时候的我们的聚会，就是有个马蹄形的那个地方，然后也有很大的房间。就是在我们这个2楼，离 Children's Ministry 要拐过去一点点就可以。是在2楼，不是在那个就是不是在1楼哈，在2楼。那6月5日呢，就是我们有一个比较大的改变，就是我们的主日崇拜呢，就不是11点了，我们的主日崇拜就改到了早上的9点半到10点半。然后主日崇拜之后呢，是主日学的时间，主日学呢改到了11点到12点，所以说呢，就是这2个时间呢调换了一下，而且呢，就是我们的先是主日崇拜，然后呢再是主日学，地点呢是不变的。那我们的主日崇拜呢还是在这里，我们主日学呢还是在主日学的房间。我们的6月6日和6月10号呢是每一年。BBC 的这个圣经的这个学校叫 Vacation Bible School， 那就可以家长如果让孩子参加的话，可以在这个教会的这个网站上进行登记哈，有1周的时间。然后呢，6月20到24号是我们的 Kids Camp 2002年3年级到5年级的一个儿童夏令营，题目是这个认识无限的神，就是如果孩子感兴趣或者家长希望孩子能够参加的话，可以在教会的网站进行登记啊。下面呢是欢迎我们的新朋友的时间看先从我的左手边这边有没有今天我们第一次或者是新来我们教会的，请你可以站起来简单的介绍一下你自己。欢迎你们 ，Welcome。在我的右手边有没有我们今天第一次来到我们教会了，或者是我们近期才来到我们教会，可以简单介绍一下自己，有没有？没有哈。今天其实令我很惊讶的是，其实我们今天可能会感觉，因为是我们的长周末嘛，很多人 family 都出行了哈，可能感觉教会会让，这是我们的，我看到很多人 来到我们这里其实是很高兴的，李林也在这里，然后浩翔也赶回来，我觉得其实是大家都是喜欢来到我们这个殿堂里面来进行主日崇拜哈。下面呢we'll ask Pastor 祝福过了吗？Okay, so we'll sing the song together.
Let's sing the welcome song. 你和我是天父爱的创造，每个人有最美的梦想，一路上彼此照亮，扶持拥抱，我们的爱让世界不一样。
一起来拍手。
我们爱，因神先爱我们，随你我不一样，我们一路上走往祝福的方向。我们爱，因神先爱我们，心再坚强也不要独自飞翔，只要微笑，只要原谅，有你爱的地方就是天堂。请大家彼此走动，彼此。你和我是天父爱的创造，每个人有最美的梦想，一路上彼此照亮，扶持拥抱，我们的爱让世界不一样。我们爱，因神先爱我们，随你我不一样，我们一路上走向祝福的方向。我们爱，因神先爱我们，心再坚强也不要独自飞翔，只要微笑，只要原谅，有你爱的地方就是天堂。有你爱的地方就是天堂。刚才Mr. Ken 给大家的期待，给大家的祝福在这里，我放在后面这边。跟我这里，我到。